James Johnson,
Yes, sir.
you hold a doctorate in physical therapy from upstate, working as a full-time bodybuilding coach and a hybrid therapist, board certified in orthopedics, residency trained, and this year alone, you have 8 pro card wins across multiple natural federations and helped over 20 athletes finish top 5 in professional and amateur ranks of bodybuilding. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's fun to hear all the accolades because it's kind of one of those things I just kind of like go about it and do it and then you don't really I mean you're probably the same way, right? Like you don't sit back and think about like how much you've actually accomplished probably in such a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, James, tell me about yourself. I know you're a fellow Upstate alum, and we should definitely talk about that here in a second. But how did you kind of get into coaching? What kind of people do you serve?
Yeah, so really I got into coaching and I think this is funny because the term coaching had such a different connotation when I started, right? Coaching was your team sport coach, right? Like this whole thought of online coaching was nowhere near where it was when I started back in 2017, which I say that as if it's like actually a really long time ago. I guess for some people it seems like it is. But I started just as a regular personal trainer. I was kind of informally training my college friends. And then when I got to grad school at Upstate, I started being a little bit more formal with it, educating myself. I got certified, and it was just a way to kind of implement the knowledge that we were learning from anatomy and physiology hands on, because that's just the way I learn. I'm really bad about, book learning and just reading lines and stuff like that. I have to see it and practice it. So it was literally me studying and I figured, I can help people and I'm passionate about the gym. So that's what got me started. And then it turned into online simply when I just ran out of time. You know how busy it is in grad school and there was just people reaching out that weren't local saying like, "Hey, like I see what you're doing now. Like how do I get involved?" And figured out how to get online and which I think honestly is the way most people should do it. If I really feel like unless you're, maybe academically trained in the health professions where you have some of those soft skills and know how to work with people, if you haven't done in-person personal training, there's so much that you miss by jumping straight into online, like how to actually like maybe even just listen to people and gather the information that you need.
hmm So you kind of started off in the fields making probably dirt poor money as a personal trainer. A lot of people, I feel like, as online coaches, before the whole online thing, they do the in-person thing, and then at some point they realize my time's limited. I can only serve people very limited, only like in person, 1 hour a day maybe. But what else are they doing the other 23 hours? If you upgrade your knowledge with your nutrition, your science, your blood work, your supplements, those kind of things, online coaching is definitely the way to go, I think, for a lot of guys. But just out of curiosity, how did you decide to go into PT school in the first place?
Yeah, that it's kind of a funny story because I always from high school told myself I was going to be a physical therapist because I was into team sports. I was pretty good in academics, and I just felt like you know what I want to do something health professions. It seems like a stable job that pays well at that time. Now we we might disagree with
Now we
that.
know it does not pay well,
Yeah.
especially with the student loans. I'm sitting on $250,000 of debt, currently accruing 6.5% interest, and I have zero way to pay them, even if I wanted to. The government will literally not let me pay off my loans. Now, James, I believe you're pretty successful with your online coaching. You don't have any student loan debt anymore, right?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I do, I do.
Oh, you do? Uh-huh.
That was one of those things. So, and that's a decision, we could spend a whole podcast talking about that. I'll keep it somewhat short. I made the decision early on because I have a family. I have 3 kids right now. I didn't early on, right? But I had a wife, kids. There was a certain lifestyle that we wanted to live. And for me to, there's really two options to pay off your student loans rapidly in a realistic way. You either go work for a hospital, a nonprofit, VA, something like that, and they have, the PSLF program, whatever it's called, they pay you off in 10 years, right? Well, I'm not fit for a hospital, right? That's just not my passion. I would have been miserable for 10 years of my life. Um, and the other option is like live so budget friendly, so dirt poor, and pour every single penny of your life for 10 to 15, maybe more years into paying those loans off. Some people do it rapidly. It just wasn't feasible for us. But you don't enjoy your life,
You
right? So
don't.
you're just every free penny, it's not going to enjoying what we've worked so hard for. It just goes back to the government. So I just made a decision where I'm going to pay my minimums and I'm going to ride it out, and that's a future James problem, right? So I gambled on myself, and we talked about this a little bit, in our earlier call. I gambled on myself that future James will be making more money than I am now, so the amount that I have to pay will be more feasible at that time.
Yeah. You took a bet on yourself because essentially you trust yourself probably more than you trust the government. I'm in a great picture to just paint it for the audience here. Physical therapy school is roughly 70K a year, give or take, depending on where you go. In New York State, right, that would mean around $200,000 for just the graduate school loans on
Yep.
top of whatever is coming from undergraduate loans. I have a couple friends in my class that are also recent grads, and I'm honestly lucky to only have 200K in debt. Some of these guys are telling me they have like half a million. But mathematically, the problem here is because physical therapy in New York State is reimbursed by insurance, and really the AMA, the American Medical Association, to the best of my understanding, is the ones who dictate how much those reimbursements are. Well, if you look at the trends, the reimbursements are not really going up. If anything, they're kind of going down
They are.
and
Yeah.
everything else is going up, the cost of tuition's going up. If you do the math on this, if you're lucky as a new grad, if we're talking about outpatient orthopedics, which is like every guy's dream, right? Or even like sports, if you're lucky, you're making like maybe 75K a year, maybe a little bit higher if you can somehow land a travel contract. There's problems with that as well. But okay, after taxes, what is that? Like 50, 55K? And then now to actually pay off your student loans, unless you do the PSLF thing, which is public service loan forgiveness, if you do the math on that, we're talking about $2,000 every single month for 25, 30 years plus interest. And then if you do the PSLF, which we were all kind of promised in the beginning of PT school, like no one knew what was going to happen with the government. That's not even a thing right now. Like they
Yeah.
put that on pause, right? So mathematically, you don't go into this career for the money. And I think they've made that very, very clear over the years. You do it because you like to do it. And of course, if you can leverage these skills elsewhere, such as what I'm doing or what you're doing, or other online coaches are, I think that's where it really shines, right? That way, it's not just a diploma, you get something else out of it.
Mhm.
But real
That's
quick,
a big stance that I have with a lot of people, and I'm glad you brought that up because when I started doing more and more away from traditional physical therapy, some of my classmates reach out and they're like, "Well, don't you feel like you're not using your degree, or like you spent all this money, like you're not even a physical therapist anymore?" And it's like you, that mindset is so boxed in because all a degree, regardless of what the degree is, undergraduate, graduate, health professions, not, that degree is teaching you skills that can be applied across a range of job titles. Or what you've done, what I've done, make your own job title, right? When someone asks me, what do I do? It's like, oh man, I got to think, like, how do I answer this to you? Because I have like 18 different hats that I could wear. And like, I'm a physical therapist who also does sports performance, who also does nutrition, like dabble in psychology, business, entrepreneurship, podcasting. Like, how do you want me to answer, right? Like, I'm my own thing. And that's why it's refreshing. But like, I'm not boxed into like, I am a physical therapist and I do what physical therapists do. No, I've learned things that allow me to treat as a physical therapist and I have a license as such, but I work so far beyond that small little box that most people put themselves in.
yeah, yeah, I love that mindset because, when I was in physical therapy school, I kind of got this slightly negative reputation as being the guy to ask way too many questions. Like specifically, when they explain some sort of topic, a lot of my classmates would just take it at face value. But then I was the guy, like right before class ended, of course, to be like, oh, but like, why is that? Is that related to that one thing? But really, at the end of the day, what that curiosity has allowed me to do is not just get a degree, because if you just get a degree, there's thousands of PT grads every single year, especially like in this area, it's very saturated. High supply, mediocre demand means pretty, shit pay.
Hmm.
But basically, I think the way to go about physical therapy is not necessarily if you don't want to just be a regular physical therapist, outpatient orthopedics physical therapist forever, is to actually gain the skills while you're going through the school, not just memorize and then dump it all on a test and just forget about that. Which, by the way, you have to remember all that stuff for the boards exam, anyways, right? But just for the audience, you graduate from upstate, what year?
2019. Yep, I had to think about that for a sec.
Okay, so I graduated 2024. For the most part, we probably had pretty similar professors. Can you just talk to me about your physical therapy experience and I can kind of share mine as well?
I feel like we're probably very similar because we our paths are very similar. I was a good student, but I was similar and I asked a lot of questions, but I also butted heads with a couple of professors because I came from such a strong strength and conditioning background where you know it as well as I do. A lot of programs, not just our program that we went to, a lot of programs are actually relatively weak in exercise prescription. So it's very basic. So I'm asking more complex questions and kind of diving into some of the nuance of training and prescription. And it was just kind of this like, well, that's not the way we think, or oh, like I haven't heard of that. And it just was kind of one of those like, all right, I've just learned what I need to learn for the test, but also know that like there's so many other options out there. Um, and yeah, I definitely there was some outdated methodologies and outdated modalities being taught that I questioned
Ultrasound?
quite. Yeah, yep. So here's a funny story. Nothing against this professor. She was one of the adjunct professors that like jumped in just for labs. Um, I failed a practical because I used the wrong type of ultrasound per her, and was told that the only way that I could pass was if I wrote a letter explaining why I was wrong, and I knew I wasn't wrong.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's
so
like really messed up.
me being the petty person I am, who also enjoys writing, I actually like researching and writing. Uh, Pretty much found 15 more relevant sources that showed her that there was no difference in whether it was pulsed or continuous ultrasound. It made no difference from a research standpoint, and showed that the references that she was using in her lecture were outdated and like 15 years old. I was like, so actually, I'm correct. No. And hey, I passed.
Yeah,
So you
well,
can see
James.
where I might not like get along with some of the professors
Mhm.
because of that mentality.
Yeah, you definitely are a guy with a heavy set of balls. You stick with what you believe in. Maybe that
Better
was a shit
focus.
test to just see like if you would just take that or try to fight back. But those are the type of guys that pull the trigger, take the risk, and do the business thing, right? And which you obviously are, right? Were you like a pretty good student?
Yeah. So I was Dean's List every single semester except for one, I believe. So like academically great. Now I will say like I struggled neurology and cardiovascular.
Hmm.
There's so much memorization of that. And again, like I said, like if I can see it, I can understand it. So anatomy, like that anatomy lab, we do the dissection. I look at it once. I like figure out like, all right, this is how that pulley would work. Done. Like I'm not looking at the books and studying for anatomy. Like that first semester in summer, like was a breeze for me because I see it, I'm done. It's in my brain forever. Where like the neuro and the cardio, oh man, I spent hours and hours and hours studying and like getting tutoring and stuff, and still just scraping by those
Dude,
classes.
dude, let me paint you a picture, okay? So in our program, at least when I went through it, that first year, I don't know if it's a litmus test. I don't know if they're trying to academically haze you, but it's obnoxiously, ridiculously hard. Not like it gets like exponentially hard. So that summer's not too bad, fall's a little bit of a level up, and that
Mhm.
spring semester
Yeah.
where you got neuro with kines and bioscience like all coming together. Dude, it's like a Hydra head. Every time you chop one off, like two more assignments pop up.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, bro. I have seen friends like basically like sleep over on the fourth
Mhm.
floor trying
Yeah.
to study, covering the entire whiteboard, just looking at this like Ranchos Los Amigos, like trying to like memorize mnemonics, like a million mnemonics. I'm out here slamming a gram of caffeine on a daily basis. Um, Memorizing. I literally, for the neuroscience exam, bro, for the final, 500 pages of notes and over 1,000 flashcards with multiple terms in each flashcard for just the neuro exam,
Mhm.
which was back to back to back to back, day after day after day, bioscience, um, and then kinesiology, and then like back to back for like six finals for an entire week straight. By the end, on like the last test, I was like so checked out. And there was even times where like some girls in my class would go to the bathroom, cry for 10 minutes, come out like nothing happened, and like this is just it's brutal. But
Yeah.
once you get through that, especially like once you're done with your first clinical, then I feel like they're like, okay, you made it through. You
Mhm.
can
Then
learn
it's all
now.
it's techniques and skills and like you have the base knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. But so that's a point. I feel like most of the listeners will probably, be physical therapists or at least in the fitness world. For all those people that say our doctorates are fake, like try and make it through it, right? Like try and make it through grad school.
It's
It's
bad.
it's not a
It's bad.
cakewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, at least for upstate, like, if you can get through the first year, you can get through the rest of the program all the
Yeah.
way up until the boards. And then the boards are, I guess a kind of a dice roll at that point.
Mhm.
Let's kind of shift though and lead into the next topic. How has physical therapy, science, or your experience kind of shaped your coaching philosophy? Like, how are you analyzing? What variables are you looking for when you're working with a client now?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, you and I both probably take like a huge movement-based approach, right? Like I want to be seeing what they're doing. It's not just like here's an exercise, go do it. Like, all right, how are we executing the exercise with what intent? All those things. But really, the things I think that set me apart are I kind of mentioned it earlier. It's those soft skills, right? The subjective interviewing. Like, how do I talk to somebody? How do I get the information out of them that I want so that I can get the information that I need? Right. And that's from the like psychological side of things, the like emotional and side of things, when especially with coaching bodybuilding prep, right? Those last couple of weeks are tough. And a lot of people want to clam up and just like they don't give you any information. And the wheels could be falling off, or they could be cheating, or they could be like really about to like break. And if you can't pull that information out of them in a way that they don't get defensive, just like with an injured individual, if you come off as callous or if you come off as like you don't care, they're not going to open up to you, and you need that information to give them their plan of care, their best treatment, all those things. So really it's a lot of the interpersonal skills that I think really is huge for coaching across the board, and something that I kind of really pride myself on is being able to like communicate effectively and gather that information. um, yeah, I mean, I could probably just like stake my claim on that. There's little nuances here and there, but like I think if I were to say like what do I do differently than other people, and my clients would back this up. I've had people come to me and say like this is a whole world of different. Like when I'm working with someone, they know I give a shit about them because I make it abundantly clear and I communicate that to them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Client focused, client centered with everything that we do. That's actually one of our, three fundamental pillars with the
Mhm.
Train by J team as well. So glad we're on the same page with that. When you're onboarding someone, do you have like a movement screen or functional movement screen, something like that, that you're doing to assess and try to figure out, identify any sort of weak points, muscular imbalances?
It's a rough one that I kind of like plug and play as I need to. So even if someone's coming to me relatively healthy, I'll still run them through some basic version of this. And for the most part, it's let's look at some of your big movements that you've been doing in your prior programming. Just 10 rep max type intensity doesn't need to be like 1 rep maxes for strength necessarily, because that's just not what I'm coaching. But I want to see your execution, your form. And then I do some like tissue capacity work, like AMRAPs, or like really trying to find like high rep maxes, unilateral training to look for compensations. So think of like single leg squat to box to
Mhm.
failure, right leg versus left leg, lateral step down, right leg versus left leg, high pull with a dumbbell, things like that. Just like looking at how they move their whole body. And then obviously if they're coming in saying like, I don't deadlift because I have a bad back, or I haven't been able to barbell
Limiting
bench.
beliefs,
Yeah,
limiting
yeah, yeah.
beliefs.
All those is like, all right, cool, because we're going to do that now.
Uh-huh. Well,
Like
let's
I'm
let's actually
challenged.
clear the air right now, okay? Common fallacies. Knees over toes. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I turn this back on someone. I dare you to try and go down a set of stairs without putting your knee over your toe. You're gonna have a fun time trying to do that, right? Like it happens every single day, thousands of times. There's nothing wrong with it unless you exceed the capacity of your tissues to handle whatever load you've selected.
Yeah, yeah. And if you have a problem with that, chances are your tissues don't have the capacity to handle that, at least yet. And that's
Mhm.
where physical therapy, periodization, client-centered approach could help you to overcome that issue. What
Mhm.
about deadlifting? Is deadlifting truly like the worst back exercise? Like you're going to definitely herniate a disc and just like die?
No, no. And I'll tell you what, like, I have injured myself deadlifting. But I've also seen people with like terrible form deadlift three times what I could ever do, and they have no injuries and no issues, right? So like form and injury is such a gray area. Where like, yeah, I program a lot of hinges. I won't even say deadlifts because there's so many different variations. I
Hmm.
don't typically program a lot of conventional deadlifting because again, my clients aren't coming to me necessarily for pure strength. They're more so for bodybuilding purposes. And I just have a stance where like RDL or a good morning could potentially be more effective for hypertrophy with less systemic stress or fatigue. So like that's
Yeah.
one of those like fatigue management tools that we use.
Hmm.
But like if someone's coming in saying like I love conventional deadlifting, cool, it's going to be in your program. That's no problem, right? Like it's not one of those you can't do that because it's going to hurt you. Like no,
Client
yeah,
centered, right? And that kind of leads into evidence-based coaching, evidence-based practice, right? EVP class. We had a whole class on that. I don't know if you did.
yep,
But essentially, what is it? Like it's what the literature is, it's what your expertise as a clinician is, and then of course the final and arguably the most important one is the client preferences. I could
hmm
give you the most scientifically backed, research-backed type of program meal plan in the world, but if you can't or won't follow it, it's
hmm
no use, right? How do you feel about back rounding on a deadlift, though? I'm just curious because I've done a little bit of research. I've looked into, I believe his name was Greg Lehman,
hmm
and actually did like a little research thing back at Upstate. But how do you feel about spinal flexion, that curvature when you're deadlifting?
So I'm the type of clinician where like I program Jefferson curls and like rounded back movements to directly target the erectors for clients who have low back pain, and I have great success with like minimizing the pain from directly targeting those tissues. What I'll say is if you're going for pure strength, it potentially has some disadvantages having a or let me even clarify that further. Having a back that changes position throughout the movement potentially has some disadvantages because there are some very successful deadlifters who begin the movement with a slightly rounded back, but they lock that position in and are able to hold it the entire time, right? Because potentially they're putting a little bit more stretch on the erectors and they just get more tension through that, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, so like when I do deadlift, I will put myself in a slightly little bit of a posterior pelvic tilt because I feel like I can better stabilize there. Because when I have injured myself, it's when I've gotten fatigued and I
Uh-huh.
get into an anterior pelvic tilt. I lose my neutral positioning. I will get fatigued and snap into an anterior pelvic tilt, and that's when
Ah,
I get compression and I get pain, right?
yeah.
So it's not rounding for me. It's actually the inability to hold a lengthened position. I go shortened and I get into injuries.
Yeah, because I mean, most people are doing the Valsalva maneuver. That's the thing. If the audience doesn't know, where you inhale and then you close your back of the throat, the glottis, to increase intra-abdominal pressure. And the idea here is the stronger the muscles around the core are to hold that pressure, the less unnecessary shear forces or load that the spine is going to have to experience. And that posterior pelvic tilt muscle, the transverse abdominis, right, is essentially giving out when you're super fatigued,
Mhm.
and that's where the injury happens. Like muscular support versus capsular support, right? The whole thing about the rounded back is if you start with a rounded back and there's tension on your muscles, not so much on the capsular, like the connective tissue, the discs, the ligaments involved, but it's on your muscles and you maintain that form, well, by definition, you stress the muscles.
Yep.
But if you start kind of straight and you start to round because you can't control it, that's now you're relying on capture support, and that's probably at a certain, couple hundred pounds, not going to be able to tolerate that level of load excessively, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think we're both on the same page. Deadlifting, super functional, different variations for bodybuilding for hypertrophic isolation motions, but overall, like it's a great exercise. I don't think it's a problem at all.
No. And just as a general kind of blanket statement, if you have a limitation where you can't do XYZ exercise because you have pain in that, a related joint, some variation of that painful exercise is probably your starting point to fix that problem, right? You can't avoid it because if you avoid it, you're putting a band-aid on it by removing the stimulus, but you're not changing the tissues or the structures that are actually causing the problem. So eventually, when you get into that position or try that movement again, the pain's going to come right back. It's this whole, it's the return to sports cycle,
Hmm.
right? If you don't train the tissues and progressively load them, there's going to come a time where you overstress them and the pain comes back. So this idea of like, I strain my hamstring, I'm going to just sit on my butt for 3 weeks. Cool, my hamstring feels better.
Yeah.
But like the tissue is now dysfunctional to some degree. And as soon as I go back to sprinting, that pain's going to come right back. And I re-injure.
Yeah, yeah, and that leads greatly into the physical stress theory, which I'm sure they had you read the Mueller 2002 article. Like I've hammered that into my brain. I see the diagram whenever I'm talking about this. It also kind of ties into the spectrum of physical therapy, which is like that avoid and protect when you're like
Mhm.
super acute high pain, just whatever it takes to get symptoms down, slowly transitioning them into more of that function optimization, the confront and load approach. If you're
Mhm.
avoiding something, maybe that's what you have to do in the very beginning, right after an injury, super high pain, get your symptoms down. Obviously, don't do any more tissue damage, but it's not going to just get better on its own unless you do something about it. That's where the appropriate loading comes in.
Mhm.
That's where a movement expert like a physical therapist, orthopedically, expertise would be able to help you with it, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
What would you say are some, pretty low-hanging fruit, common but easily preventable injuries when it comes to resistance training, specifically for bodybuilders? Because I see lower back pain, knee pain, and shoulder pain, I think is like the top
Mhm.
three.
Mhm.
What are like some ways that we could prevent common injuries in those joints?
Mhm. Yeah. So obviously, I don't love the word prevent, and I know that when we say that, that's such a like a it gives a lot of people the ick, right? Because we never want to like stake a claim I'm going to prevent this injury because when it eventually happens, like it will,
Mhm.
now it's our name on the line. I think there are two things that people could implement right now that will dramatically decrease the risk of injury or decrease the reoccurrence of an old injury, and that to me is eccentric control, time under tension, like not using momentum, like any one of those three things, right? So think about like where does somebody injure themselves on a squat specific to their knee? They're probably bottoming out super hard, bouncing off their legs,
Mhm.
using, braces and stuff like that, getting some elastic recoil there, and they're successful, but they're kind of overriding like what their tissues can actually control because they're using momentum and elastic and springs and stuff like that versus if you go down slow,
Mhm.
then you know that it's the tissues that are actually controlling the movement and the tissues that are powering you out of the hole, right? So again, for maybe it's not the best thing for strength or power development, but if we're talking purely aesthetics, hypertrophy, bodybuilding, injury prevention, I think slow, moderately slow eccentrics, not like obsessively, obnoxiously slow,
Yeah.
are a really good way to minimize shear force across joints and minimize ligament and passive tissue strain. This second thing is your order of operations. Again, I love to program in a non-traditional way when it comes to like strength. So your old, 5x5, what was it? We're going to jump right into barbell squats. We're going to spend tons of time warming up in your squats. And that's the first movement because we're fresh and we want to be strong in it. Well, if I don't necessarily care about what my absolute strength is in any given movement, because I'm just here for hypertrophy, I can do movements like abduction, adduction, leg extension, leg curl, get all of my isolations done first, get the blood flowing to all those joints, get myself kind of like CNS firing, right? Like psychologically ramped up.
Motor unit control.
Yep.
Hmm.
And then go into my big movements and I'm kind of locked in. My joints feel good. I'm ready and I'm a little bit fatigued. So my absolute load that I have to use is now actually lower. So then there's a less risk of injury there too, right? And there maybe isn't a research study that says that, but tell me what, like if I'm going to put 405 on my back and squat versus now I'm tired, I only need 275, 315, like which one do you think has a higher risk of injuring you? It's kind of a
Yeah.
little bit common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ties into the stimulus to fatigue ratio,
Mhm.
stimulus to risk ratio. And a good quote that I heard is train the muscle, not the joint, right? If you can get a equally effective hypertrophic stimulus from 225, and you're doing this for bodybuilding, especially as you're getting closer to the show, you're depleted, you're tired, you're fatigued, you're already at a higher risk of injury. Well, maybe we can't prevent injury, but we can certainly minimize it. in theory, over time with smart training, controlling the weight. I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the greatest of all time, he said something like, I could get a better bicep stimulus with one set of bicep curls using 40 pounds than most other people who do like an entire workout, doing every single machine, throwing the weights around and everything. And that just goes to show, right? It's if you're like really good at what you're doing, you're actually doing these things with intent, not just going through the motions, which I see like all the time, then you're able to actually generate enough tension in the target tissue to elicit those hypertrophic responses. And to your first point there with the eccentrics, I'm a really big fan of that for two reasons. One is in the long term, that's really good for tendon strengthening, arguably the best type of contraction for tendon strengthening. Number two, it's the most muscle damaging, which by extension would mean that it's the most anabolic. And number three, it uses the least amount of ATP. So in other words, it's the least fatiguing while also being the most anabolic at the same time. It's the best of all three worlds. And I also like the pre-exhaust thing. That's actually something new that I've been sort of incorporating, especially into my leg days. It's worked out very well for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, I switched specific my legs because I had some low back injuries, like I mentioned. My squats and deadlifts. So like right now, this is a prime example. The leg day that I'm running right now, I start out with calves and abs because I'm lazy and I would skip them if I did them later, right? So there's a strategy for those listening in. Like if you know you're weak at doing something, like make yourself do it first. And it's one of those things like I'm doing them on a leg press for my calf raises. Like I can just sit there as I'm drinking my pre-workout and kind of like just zone out a little bit, get into it. I don't have to think that much. Then I go hamstring curls to get some blood flowing to the back of my knee, stretch myself out there a little bit, and then I get into my squats. And my deadlifts, the movement that I've injured myself on the most, is the last thing that I do before I leave the gym. So I am fatigued. I'm only using like 225 for RDLs right now, where in the past I've done upwards of 405 for sets. And I'm getting a great stimulus because my hamstrings are already cooked from everything else I did. And I'm just kind of finishing them off with that movement.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of your workout, there's already so much metabolic stress, which is one of the three vectors to growth in the first place, that you don't need the other two, the progressive overload and mechanical tension, as much to
Mhm.
generate an effective anabolic stimulus. You've already done a lot of that work to get there. So that's actually very, very similar to what I've been doing for my leg days. So again, glad that we're on the same page.
Mhm.
Let's talk about clients. What would you say are three characteristics of like your most successful clients? Like, how do you know from like day one, based on these three characteristics, that they're going to be massively successful working with you?
Mhm. I'm going to come back to communication being the first one. If you're not communicating with your coach, whether it's me, you, whoever, they can't help you, right? So my most successful clients are the ones that have a very good understanding of or of my processes, my systems. They abide by the things that I put in place. They fill out my forms, all that stuff. The people that consistently skip check-ins, or even if they're like checking in, they're not putting a lot of effort into it. I can't help you if I don't know what's going on, right? So people, I get those people where I think it's a personality trait where they don't want to bother me, right? But you're hiring me for my service, and it bothers me to know that I'm not helping you to my best ability because I can't get this information out of you, right? So communication is absolutely huge. It's a two-way street from the coach, but also from the client. And I really think the most successful clients are the ones that come in with an understanding that like things aren't going to be perfect. The ones that come in and say like I'm training 7 days a week, I'm not going to miss a single meal, not going to miss a step. Like well, let's crush this. The ones that it's almost like they're overcompensating, and those crash and burn. Or I got to pull them back and be like, hey, like we got to learn that like there's going to be periods of like locking in. There's going to be periods where life happens, and both are okay. And it's this like constant flux between the two, right? So with on that, like as a third thing, a busy working professional or like a parent that has bodybuilding goals, to me like that is going to be my best client because one, that's me. Like I'm a busy professional working bodybuilder who has kids, so I can empathize with them and I can plan for that because I'm living it. But two, like time management skills for people like that are just out of this world, right? Because if they're still dedicating time to lifting, like I know if I tell them to do something, they're going to find a way to do it because they do that with every aspect of their
They
life,
have
right?
to. It's a
Within reason.
priority for them.
Yeah, like that's it. They're coming to me because this means something to them. It's not a vanity thing, right? Like I don't want to beat up on any demographics, but like the 16-year-old that just like, oh man, I want to look good for the gram. I'm probably not the best coach for you because I'm not like the dude in your DMs like hyping you up every single day. And like you're probably in it for the wrong reason right now, right? I think we probably all start there, and they'll probably eventually change that tone. But the like dad who injured his leg and he hasn't been able to work out for a year, and man, he like really wants to get back into it because he can't keep up with his kids, or he wants to set a good example for his family and show them like you can still be strong and fit, and like that's the guy that I'm gonna like go all in for because I know how much it means to them.
Yeah, yeah. So to sum it up, good communication,
Hmm.
not expecting perfection,
Hmm.
then already having good time management skills, which would usually be reflected if they're already a busy parent,
Hmm.
but they have to. They literally
Yeah.
cannot be living their life unless this really meant a lot to them,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
Gotcha, gotcha. I tie that down with my clients on day one, the importance of communication. I leave the open door policy at all times, like no stupid questions, like text me. I straight up tell them, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. on Christmas, New Year's, the first, my firstborn child got born. If you have a question, text me. Like I'm never gonna be the guy that's gonna be like triggered because you text me like late at night. And then as far as our check-ins, you do weekly check-ins as
Yep.
well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So with a check-in process, we do that through the Train by J app, and it like gives you a little reminder
Mhm.
every single week. But as you said, life happens, right? Some guys are active duty in the military; they get called into the field. I mean, I've heard freaking divorce, child custody battles, like mental health issues. Like, I didn't sign up for this necessarily when I got into online coaching. Like, I thought I was gonna just work with pro bodybuilders and like win the Olympia. But things happen, things change, and I like where what I'm doing now. But at the end of the day, if you're not sending in your check-in, that's a very valuable piece of it. Like it's a very essential piece of information that your coach needs. How do you expect them to help you without that kind of information? Like even like send it to me late. That's better than not sending it to me at all. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think some of it's my personality thing too, where if I don't hear from somebody, I just assume the worst and feel and like the wheels are falling off, everything's terrible. And I have some clients that have proven me wrong about that. Like they'll miss a couple in a row, and then like the third week they'll send over a message and be like, "Hey, like I've been busy, but I've been crushing it. Like everything is good. Like don't worry about me." And I'm like, "All right, at least I heard from you. Like cool. Next week, just even if you don't want to fill out the whole form, like send me a message, be like all is good." You know, like
just give me something.
keep going with the
Just
program. Yeah.
something. Yeah,
For my
every single week.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to clients, I've had a lot of thought around this, but how do you know when to take a super blunt honesty approach and almost like roast them versus a very empathetic, understanding tone when something happens?
Hmm. I, it comes with practice, man. The more you do it, the more you'll kind of be able to read people, and that comes with, I think, our schooling as well. Like you can pick up on some of those cues of who can take a little bit more criticism and who can't.
Hmm.
What I will say for like younger coaches listening to this, those conversations, if you feel like you ever need to have one where you are more harsh, hop on a live call because so much is lost in translation. I have personally gotten frustrated or aggravated with a client because of the way something read through an email and vice versa, where I've sent something via email, message, text, whatever, and that person became offended. And then we were kind of like this, and we're like, hold on, like, let's just get on a call. And it's like, no, like, we're okay, talk this through live, it's
Hmm.
always going to be a better option, right? So if you don't have that as part of your coaching plan, like I really encourage a lot of people to implement it for those like Hail Marys, like something's going wrong here. We gotta chat this out. Um, and even when I am being harsh with someone, you really have to learn the skill of like, this is not a personal attack on you. My criticisms of what is going on right now are not any reflection of like you being a good person, a bad person, a good client, a bad client. Is I just have higher expectations for you that you're not living up to. And I have those expectations for your own good, right? Like anything I'm saying now that you see as derogatory or put your guard up a little bit, it's because I want the best for you. And if clients don't know that, that can be a problem, right? So again, it comes back to like as a coach, you have to communicate that well so that they know like when push comes to shove and I say like, no, you need to do this. It's not because I'm being a jerk. It's because I'm seeing the failures that you have and I'm seeing your blind spots and I'm calling you out on it.
Yeah, yeah, those interpersonal skills are absolutely cardinal to being a successful coach, I would say, in my opinion. I used to think that it's all about only the science, like how much do you know about different macros and different hormones. That's good to understand, and clients, of course, appreciate that. But understanding where they're coming from is absolutely very important as well. One thing that I've been doing is if I ever want to get across a point to a client but it's kind of awkward or it could be taken in the wrong way. I like to use voice memos
Hmm.
because then you can hear the tone, the empathy behind my voice, or of course hop on a live call. And that's precisely why every month, bare minimum, they're getting a live one-to-one call with someone on the team, whether it's me or someone on the staff.
Hmm.
And then finally, I would say I learned this from one of my business mentors is when you're giving someone feedback, there's this framework called a PFFF framework. Have you heard of that before?
I have. I'm not super familiar with it though.
Gotcha. So I'm glad that it's like an actual thing that exists. But
Mhm.
I've used it a couple times and it does work well when I implement it at the correct time. That stands for P is permission. You're asking the client, hey, do I have your permission to give you some honest feedback here? Something happened, right? The first F is the facts. Facts are facts, so they're not, you're not going to be able to argue with them. So the fact might be, hey, dude, you missed the last four out of the last five success calls. Or, hey, dude, we said that on Tuesday, 8 p.m., you're going to be here on the call. That didn't happen for XYZ reason. Then the second F is feelings, but specifically it's your feelings because your feelings are your feelings. Like no one can tell you how you're supposed to feel. So to that, I might say something like, "Hey, you missed the last four of the last you missed the last four of your five success calls. That kind of makes me feel that this maybe isn't a high priority for you, right? Or maybe made me feel like maybe I'm not supporting you as much as I should as a coach." And then finally, the final F is, of course, the future. What are we going to do differently about this if this happens again? Because the definition of learning is a different behavior given the same circumstance, right?
Mhm.
So I've seen that work pretty well. Now that you know what the PFFF is, I would definitely encourage you to give that a try if you are ever kind of in that rut. Like, I don't really know how to handle
Mhm.
that. It's worked pretty well for me.
Yeah, no, and that's, I feel like you kind of instinctively do that, right? Like you, I would be interested to see too, like, right, like we give our feelings, but give that time for the client to express themselves too, right? It can't just be us talking over them, right? Because there is some sort of barrier going on if they're not doing what's being asked of them. And if you can figure out what that barrier is, there's the future, right? Because now you can work around that. You can find a substitution for whatever the friction is, right? Maybe it's part of the process that they just don't connect well with, or maybe it's like they need a little bit more support in certain areas and you haven't picked up on that yet. So always giving time for the client to actually like express themselves too, I think is huge. But I mean, I'm sure you do that, right? I'm not implying that you don't.
Yeah, yeah, didn't take it that way. All right. What would you say to someone who's brand new to the coaching game? Like, what kind of advice would you have wanted to hear when you were new to this game?
Hmm. If we're talking like purely online, because again, I gave my soapbox about how I think a lot of people should probably start in person or have some level of in-person work that they're doing on top of the online. And that's the way I like to practice too, is just a hybrid of the two. Um, if someone were talking just purely about online coaching, I really do think like education is huge, but you're never you, you just got to get repetitions in, right? Do really good work for whatever few clients you have, and that's going to be the best thing you can do because once you have their confidence, you can learn from your mistakes because you will make them. Absolutely. Everyone does. I still do. And you can ask them for their feedback, grow from that feedback, and then you have referral sources, right? So to me, organic growth will always be the most consistent growth, the thing that I can like hang my hat on, right? If I do really good work for these five people and then they tell their friends, now I have 10 clients, then I have 15 clients, and that's slow linear growth instead of having to dump gasoline and money into the equation and get, 300 inquiries and then it gets chaotic and you might not be ready for that, right? So I guess if I'm on a tangent, but start slow, start organic, learn from your mistakes, be open about learning from your mistakes, and actually have some system in place to like listen to client feedback so that they have an opportunity to tell you what you're maybe not doing as well as they would hope. Um, yeah, and this is something I struggled with, but I think the last thing I would say would be like find your niche and niche down early. Everyone comes in and they want to say like I won't turn down anybody, and it's hard to at first because there's financial incentive to like take as many clients as you can.
Yeah.
But there's so many people in this industry and it's only going to keep growing where if you're just another online coach, you're lost in a sea. Right? We talked earlier about like I work so much outside of the physical therapy box that like I don't even know what my title is anymore, but I can tell you who I work really well with and I have a niche, right? Like I am one of very few physical therapists who work in a hybrid capacity who work with natural bodybuilders, and I have very good success with master's level women's bodybuilders, right? What's the common connection, right? Those are the working professionals who have time management skills. They're responsible people. They are mature people, so I can have mature conversations with them. And more often than not, a lot of those have injuries, and other coaches probably can't program in the way that I can because I have that injury management background to help them be as successful as they can possibly be instead of avoiding all the movements, right? So I get better results with the people that other people can't.
Yeah. So to recap, to your first point there, organic growth is the
Hmm.
most reliable. It's just natural for people to want to share their positive experience with their friends and family at the dinner table or even at
Right.
the gym if you've done such a good job for them.
Hmm.
And that's going to help your reputation, your brand, your identity in the space as well. And then you also have to suck before you get good, right? So whatever niche you pick, and of course niches get bitches, that's the saying. You
Yeah.
got to niche down. You got to be able to say no to say yes to the right people.
Yeah.
But whatever niche you pick, you're gonna suck in the beginning, but that's just part of the learning process. And just keep the mindset of you either win or you learn. It's gonna be a lot of learning in the beginning before you get your first win. So
Hmm.
definitely can agree with that point as well.
Yeah.
What are some mentors in the maybe YouTube guru fitness space that you feel like would be very productive for newer guys to the coaching field?
Hmm. So the first people, there's probably two people that I first learned a lot of my information from.
Mhm.
W- One being Lane Norton, which he's a little bit more controversial now than he used to be, because of some of the series and the rants that he goes on. But he's a very well educated person. He was one of the like probably the second of the like full time online coaches that ever existed. Dr. Joe being like the guy that started online coaching. Lane was Dr. Joe's one of his first clients.
Mhm.
Lane started online coaching, so like you got to give him some respect. He kind of like started this whole industry. PhD in like biology and nutrition and all that stuff. And he was a world record holder, powerlifter, and bodybuilder, right? So like really good wealth of knowledge. I learned a ton of information from his prep book, because he actually put out like a bodybuilding prep book that is very instructional. So there's a lot of good information in that that's still relevant, even though it came out probably about 10 years ago now. And Team 3DMJ being like a group of coaches specifically in the natural bodybuilding world. I forget how many, I think there's five of them. Those guys as a whole take a very similar approach to I do, where it's very client centric. It's very like, how do we create something specific to you? It's not one of these coaches where like we have our plan and we stay with our plan and every client does this and we're the high volume guys or we're the low volume guys or they're the guys that like we get results based on like what you need. And they just have that mindset of like that fluidity and finding that balance. So I really find that refreshing. But they have a wealth of resources on their website that are, and I'm not affiliated. I'm not going to get any codes or anything like that, right? They've got like a whole library of courses that you can take. Some are free, some are paid. Their YouTube is a huge wealth of information. Their podcasts as well. Like when I go on trips, they're one of like four podcasts that I'll just like listen to the episodes. And now I feel like at this point, like I'm more so just like agreeing with what they're saying because I have so many conversations with these guys. When I was coming up, though, it was like I'm taking notes. Like everything they're saying, I'm just absorbing because it is like these guys have been doing this for 2 decades, 3 decades or longer, and they just have seen it all.
Yeah, yeah. So like when you first get into it, you're probably going to take a lot of influence from a lot of your mentors or people that you're watching on YouTube.
Hmm.
And then you kind of start to get your own foot in and figure out what kind of works for your specific population. I would
Hmm.
say for me, Athlete X is pretty much the reason that I wanted to become a physical therapist in the first place. because
Hmm.
back in high school, I was 95 pounds my first day of high school, got pinned by 135 on the bench press, and I was like, this is not the way. Like I need to get bigger. So I would go and spend all my free time researching on YouTube, like how to get bigger. Why does my shoulder hurt when I do the bench press?
Hmm.
And Athlete X, Jeff Cavalier, was the only guy that was actually able to break down in an
Yep.
easy to understand manner the biomechanics of everything involved. And come to find out, the reason he could do that was because of his physical therapy education. And of course, the rest is history. So I did the program. I was actually in PT school like committed to getting into physical therapy school back in high school. So I didn't have to worry about taking the GRE or anything like that. So that was
Mhm.
great. But I'm glad that AthleanX, I wish him the best. Like he is a very big reason of who I am and what I am today.
Yep.
Other than that, though, J3U, have you heard of J3U before?
Yeah, John Jewett, awesome, awesome coach, great guy. He's another one in the industry I've never had the chance of meeting, but like I listen to his podcast and I just feel like he's one of the good ones, right? Like he's in it for the right reason. He's kind of like down to earth, but like very, very knowledgeable, and I appreciate the way he presents evidence.
Yeah, yeah, and he's kind of similar to us in the sense that he was a registered dietitian, just working a regular 9 to 5, and then he started his business on top of that, and now he is, John Jewett, the
Yeah,
man, right?
the guy.
Yeah, AthleanX, J3U are definitely my, top two guys there.
Mm.
Um, cool. So, what's your Instagram, James, so that people can find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, I might have to look this up a little bit. I have so many different profiles. I'll just say my personal profile is the easiest to find me, and then from there I can direct people because I'm involved with a lot of different things. So it's J period Johnson period DPT. If you search that, you're gonna find me. I don't have a huge following, which is fine. Like I don't need to have a huge following. I cringe at the word influencer. And actually somebody in my DMs like referenced me. They were one of these like cold callers, like, hey, like I'd love to build this sales program for you and like influencers like you. And I was like, hold up, like you've lost me entirely because like never refer to me as an influencer. Like I am a freaking doctor of physical therapy. I'm like well established coach. I own multiple businesses. Like I'm not out here like hawking products. Like get out of my DMs. Anyway, Jay Johnson DPT is where you can find me on Instagram. I don't have a YouTube or anything right now. I had somebody who was working with me that was running one for a little bit, and man, I don't. It's one of those things that like I know I should do. I would love to have more content, but I do not want to make the content myself. Like the editing and all that stuff. So it really is just Instagram for me.
So if there's any videographer or video editors that are watching that could help you out, they should DM you, right?
Yeah, yeah, we can work something out. I
Okay.
would love to have someone just follow me around all day so they could hear all the shenanigans, like learn and all these things, but I don't want to learn it myself. I don't have the time.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, James, I think this was a very productive call. This was my first ever podcast. I think it went pretty well. What do you
I'd
think?
say so. Yeah, no, this is yeah, so and we didn't even touch on it, right? Like so me and two of my best buddies run Natty News Daily, which is a podcast that like we've put out 200, 300 episodes, something like
Oh,
that.
so
So
that's why you're so good at this. I was like, this guy's a natural. Like, I did
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
expect it to
So
be this smooth.
and that I get that a lot. Like it is a skill, and you'll learn this. But you did very good at like keeping things smooth and fluid, and like good conversation that didn't feel forced. We started back in 2020, and it's funny to look back at those episodes, right? So like things get much more natural, and you learn like when you need to like pull stuff from people and when you need to let them talk. But yeah, like the podcast game is a fun one. It eventually gets to the point where you're just having a conversation with people and you look forward to it because you get to learn things. Like that's how I go into every podcast. Like I'm not trying to put on this persona and like be this like large, character and all that. It's just that I am who I am, and if people like it, great. And I just go and I have a conversation with somebody and like genuinely try and learn about them.
Yeah, yeah. You got to be willing to be hated to be loved.
There you go.
Hmm. Well, thanks so much, James. I'm hoping that we can, perhaps do something like this again, maybe a different topic. But
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording right now. I'll see you guys later.